Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a thrilling journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the enigmatic mysteries of the past, and the uncharted territories of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together, we'll unravel the intricate tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean.
And I got stumbled up there a bit on our intro because I was thinking as I was saying those words of how we're going to kind of touch on a lot of those different things all in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Like every word I was reading.
That's funny. I spaced out for a second while you were reading that, and I was just thinking how happy I was to have like the music intro because it was getting my mind off the stupid Wizard of Oz song that's been stuck in my head all day.
Well, now you brought it up, so you got to sing it.
I don't know. I can't sing it. I'm not a singer, guys. That's why I make beats, so I can stay behind. On the other, well, now I'm in front of a microphone, but not for singing.
But it's funny too, the song, I mistook life for truth. Yeah. I just love that. It's such a great intro song to this. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast yet.
I think we've pointed out that lyric before.
Yeah, I love it. Every time we get led in by it, I think about it.
A local artist here in Sacramento who... I actually went to elementary school with him.
Did you actually?
Yeah, I didn't Stevie. Know that. We went to elementary school together, and all the way up through 6th grade, it was a Catholic school. And then I didn't see him again for years until high school. And somehow we reconnected even after high school, years later, after still not hanging out. But he got into music, and I had started a studio, and our paths crossed, and so this was actually one of his songs that he had already written, and he had allowed us to sample it for one of our soul food tracks.
Yeah, I didn't know you knew him in elementary school. That's fascinating. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't know that was his original. That was a song that he had already gotten recorded before, and you guys just sampled it.
Yeah, I think he started.
I thought he actually recorded that with you guys.
Elementary at like 3rd grade is when I met him.
Oh, okay. Good old.
Which I remember because he was the new kid that year, and he beat me in the spelling contest.
No way.
It came down to me and him. I was like, freaking new guy. Got me.
So, as you guys have seen by the title, we hinted at it in a previous episode.
Well, we kind of did more than hint at it. We did a whole segment talking about that initial experience that they had. Briefly, yeah.
But yeah, and gave a little bit of my initial thoughts on it.
Yeah, so we're talking about Chris Bledsoe and his encounters and the crazy events that have happened with him and his family over the years.
And currently.
So I have been attempting my homework. I got about halfway through that podcast.
Oh, yeah. The one on Danny Jones, right?
Yeah. And then I decided, well, since you're listening to the podcast and other stuff, I just got his book, and I've been listening to his book, and I wound up 3 hours short.
Almost made it.
But it was already not a super long book in the first place, maybe an 8-hour book. So that's like a good third of it. So I definitely could be missing some important revelations from the end of the story.
Yeah, but I mean, he does talk about a lot of that stuff on the podcast too. So maybe we can fill it in together.
Yeah, cool.
But
it definitely has changed my perspective. I mean, you guys, any of you who heard that last episode where we dedicated a segment to the story, I was giving out a lot of like, I mean, I don't want to hang my hat on any one thing.
Yeah.
And that's still true, but like, it was just because I hadn't looked into him yet, so I was too wary to like say anything like too positive or negative against, like, for or against it, because I just didn't know enough.
Didn't know, yeah. But how do you feel now? What's your general, like, before we start in, like, where's your head at?
His, like, it's probably just the way you have to, like, word sentences and phrases when you write a book, but it sounds very, when you sit there, and the book is, like, not, but almost like a partial autobiography, you know? And so, like, it sounds a little conceited. I did this and I did that and my life was like this. And right. You know, as he's going through all the intro chapters, I'm not realizing, like, all the foundation he's laying. I mean, I just think he's just telling us a bunch of anecdotes from his childhood, just because
that they don't really
he wanted to talk about himself. So at the first, I kind of was like, okay, I don't know yet. And then he got into the encounter, and the details of that were real. You did a really good job of recapping that, because it was all pretty close to what you had described to me. And then, as he keeps going and he starts describing all the different ways that it basically
changed his life, right?
Well, at first destroyed his life.
Yeah. The first 5 years is what he says is like, I can't remember the phrase he used, but it was like, I don't know. I think it's like, shit. I can't remember. He says a certain phrase about it, but anyway, yeah. The first 5 years were like hell to them.
Yeah. It's because they didn't know, they didn't talk to each other, and anyway, we'll get into all the details about it, but like him recounting all that, and like recounting things that, like, he clearly wouldn't want to recount, just out of, like, keeping personal matters to yourself, you know?
Right.
It started to open me up to his message more. And then later on, once he finally starts getting connected with people in the real, like, UFO
and the government and all that, right?
I really like the government people, like, that does not make me trust him more. Sure. If anything, it makes me trust him less.
Gives him a little bit of a red flag with that stuff, yeah.
Well, yeah, just because the government has reasons to, like, push narratives around the topic. Whereas, you know, a private citizen just talking about a story doesn't necessarily, I mean, maybe, like, they can have their own sorts of motives and stuff, but that's the type of stuff I had been being wary about, right? So, anyway, no, the people he encountered that really, like kicked him up a couple notches is he was actually one of his main people he spent time with was Diana Pasulka.
I was going to say, yeah. Yep.
And
she's her
quote unquote Tyler Durden, which is Timothy Taylor,
right? And he's the NASA guy, right?
He's the NASA guy,
and he connects with him through Diana.
And then there's the other NASA guy, Hal.
Yeah, originally when I first listened to it, I had told you it was Hal Putoff, but it was actually Hal.
Right. I don't know his last name. Did you get it?
I do. I did have it somewhere. I think I texted it to you, but yeah, it was a Hal P name, Povenmire. That was it, Hal Povenmire, and he's like a really well-known NASA official. He's like some sort of super genius, supposedly. That
according to Chris's story, he was one of the first people involved in NASA.
Yeah, he even like worked.
He was like in that first generation of scientists recruited.
Yeah, and he worked closely as like an intern, like a young intern with who's the Nazi scientist? I'm just blanking on his name.
Oh, the one who ran NASA, the one who came over from Paperclip.
Why am I blanking? We're both blanking.
I'm too tired tonight.
I know.
To remember stuff.
Here we go. Werner von Braun.
Werner von Braun.
Sorry, I don't know why I blanked. I've heard that name and I know that name very well. But Werner, he was like supposedly an intern early on. He was born in 1939. I was just listening to Ryan Bledsoe's podcast with Danny Jones that he did after Chris was on, and they talked about it a little bit more. But Werner von Braun wasn't, but the guy Hal Povenmire was born in 1939. So he was born, and he was like supposedly 17 years old when he got an internship with NASA because he was like this super genius
that would
kid.
put it like in the 50s there, which is exactly when he said he started. Yeah.
So, and also he worked with J. Allen Hynek and was a part of the operation to kind of debunk a lot of the UFO stuff. And initially, when they brought up how they told the whole story of him coming into their lives, it was him to kind of discredit them. He came in as kind of like this NASA official that, you know, at least as far as what Ryan was saying and what Chris was saying, like he didn't let on or give him any information on like what he knew or what he was really there for. It was more of like just asking questions.
Yeah. But he was like nice and kind with them, which is like, they needed that. Anyway, before we get ahead of ourselves in the story,
we should probably retell
let's
incident.
Retell what we can out of memory of the incident and the following events. So if you've already heard this on that last episode where we basically went a whole half hour on it, and you don't want to hear it again, you can use the chapters to skip to the next.
We might actually give a little bit more detail because I've gone a little bit deeper into it, so we might give a little bit more detail if you're not willing to go
identical, and you won't have me just sitting there being like, well, every 2 minutes about it.
So yeah, basically the initial incident was January 8th, 2007. And the way Chris tells it is this time in his life was, you know, tumultuous. He had a Crohn's disease, which had, you know, led to him selling his business. And
let me back up because I did the book. So
give me some more.
He actually gives you like context for his life.
Okay, let's hear that then.
So he actually has had multiple like near-death experiences in his life. Yeah, he was one time he was electrocuted. One time he was caught on fire. One time he like fell from a construction site and got like skewered.
Impaled.
He
got shot in the back with a shotgun.
He got shot with with birdshot when he was 8 by another 8-year-old kid.
I know that one. That was the only one I knew about.
And he still has pellets in him. Some of the birdshot in him, so he like sets off metal detectors anytime he goes through them.
That's so cool.
Yeah, he's like, he says like slowly over time they like have been coming out over the years, like, and he can always like feel when one's starting to surface. But it apparently for his little 8-year-old body, that thing went in, and a bunch of it got lodged between like his heart and his spine. And so it was basically inoperable. They could not.
Otherwise, you're doing more damage.
Yeah, they couldn't go in there and get that stuff. So because he was
so
alive,
small too.
Yeah, they left it in. Yeah.
So how many is that? That's 4 or 5.
That's like 4
already?
times he almost died. And then his first wife.
I didn't even know he had a first wife.
Yeah, he had a first wife when he married his high school sweetheart, and they were like head over heels. And he was like traveling a lot for his construction work. He had to go like work out of town while she would stay in town. Yeah. He said there's this one weekend where he's driving back in town to like go to a party with her and spend the weekend with her. And so he gets to the party, and no one has seen him yet, but he sees her, sitting and talking and like engaging in a conversation with like her ex. And then he started getting these feelings welling up inside him, and so he left the party, and he drives away, and then he pulls off and he stops and he thinks, and he's like, there's nothing that I saw there that is any indication that anything was happening. This is all in my head. I need to give her the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to go back to that party and not just ruin the night. So in his town, there is this dead man's curve where you need to go like 30 miles an hour or else you're flying off the road.
Right.
And multiple people had died there over the years.
All small towns have one like that.
Yeah. So he's reapproaching that dead man's curve, and as he's coming to it, he sees a car had gone off and crashed. And so he goes out there and he finds the person that got flung from the car and tells the person who lives on the property right near that to call.
I'm sure they're used to it by this point.
And he's like trying to help the person, and then he's realizing like they're dead. And then he looks at the car again, and then he realizes it's his wife's car. And then he realizes that's his wife that's in his arms. He didn't recognize her because she was so mangled.
Shit.
And so his first wife died in his arms.
That's traumatic, yeah.
Yeah. So he's had a ton of like heartbreak, a ton of like physical pain.
Yeah.
He's had the types of things that can like set you up to be not just your average human, right? Like,
yeah, you're not going to have the same
in other places, right?
Makeup anymore.
But also in other places in like paranormal and conscious phenomena and stuff. It's those types of events that can like trigger open like you up. That would change the way your brain wires, and they can like essentially like wake up these parts of your brain. And a lot of times people who go through trauma like that can have more sensitivity to like psychic phenomena and stuff like that. But he never thought he had anything like that. But
so interesting.
Yeah.
So okay, so yeah,
and then the bad times leading up to the event, which was that his family had been doing really well. They had this big construction company that was super successful, and they were making all this money,
living in $1 million house with a pool and all these things that he described, and like they had a set of a way of life that was.
But he had never taken business school. And so he wasn't necessarily the best at like managing the finances. He wasn't hiring people to handle work for him. He was overburdened. His Crohn's was getting worse and worse and worse.
And we're at the beginning of a financial crisis during 2007.
This was leading up to 9/11.
No, I know.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't too long after that. Like this is the beginnings of like that time period where because he's a construction worker, he's selling
the beginning of that anyway.
Yeah, he's selling the house. He's selling a lot of these houses that a lot of these bankers are short selling or doing what they're doing financially behind the scenes.
Right.
And he wasn't capable of handling all that.
So because of the financial situation of his company. And because he was having such a hard time keeping up with it because of his Crohn's, he said his Crohn's was like making him take like 30 trips to the bathroom a day.
Right. And he had to take his medicine every day. Otherwise, it would just like be out of control.
It was just debilitating and so painful for him. And he could barely like function.
So yeah, that's like.
And then 9/11 happened, and that put there was like a sort of damper on the economy there, especially in their town where it was kind of a military town. And so people weren't necessarily trying to settle down and like buy houses right then when, the military's getting spun up and sent around the world. Like people aren't,
settling. Yeah. No, exactly. I know what you mean. They're living on base and then they're being sent somewhere else. Yeah.
Right. So there's less military people buying houses in that community, which was kind of like
their bread and butter.
So he goes to sell his company, and then the person he sells his company to like ends up doing a bunch of underhanded stuff to like even screw him over a little more. And he basically comes out of it with like barely any money. Like he ends up broke and takes a bunch of like side jobs and stuff, and gets back into construction. And then comes the original thing was in 2007.
2007, yeah. So it was beginning of 2007. It's January 8th. So yeah, that leads us perfectly into it. January 8th, 2007. He talks about some like his father's construction crew or whatever had just sold the big job or whatever, and he had a few guys that were going to pick up a check from the developer or whoever was going to be buying. And so they come and bring him his dad's last check, and they go and he cuts them checks and all this, and they're like, hey, take us fishing. So he's like, all right, and his son is also a part of this crew, I'm assuming.
Yeah, his son
Chris Jr.
His son was like at his like senior or junior year of high school, right then, 17
or 18 at the time.
Chris feels like guilty because he feels like he's not giving his son a chance to like graduate, and that this event basically like ruined his future. And anyway, he ended up like that was his first time. He spent like the whole summer like doing framing with them that summer on that property, and then when they finished that job, he ended up like going on to have a career being a framer, being
a construction worker. Got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he takes a few of their guys. I can't remember how many. I think it was 2 or 3 of the workers plus Chris Jr.
2 others
plus Chris Jr. Right,
plus
and then
Chris
him.
Jr.
So there's 4 of them.
Yeah.
And he takes them fishing on the Cape Fear River, and the way that he describes it is they go to this kind of dead end area that kind of butts, is parallel to the river, and that's where they kind of like park and get out and go fishing.
Yeah, this is a little hike from where they park down to where they fish, but it's not too far.
Right, but it's on this like dead end kind of cul-de-sac.
Yeah, it's like a cul-de-sac thing. And then they get off.
And I don't know if there's houses. I think it's like an actual like end of a road type of a dead end. It's not like a inhabited area, really. It's more of a rural area.
It's rural, yes, and that detail comes up later.
Yeah. So they get all their fishing gear out, and they build a little fire or something, and then they start fishing. And Chris immediately, he had no real intentions of fishing. He's having hard times, and he's just wanting to take these guys out for a good time. And
he's not spend some money. He is at his lowest point he's been at
really
up to that point so far in his life. And he's like happy that he's got a day where he's like, or at least enough time that he can be out here, and the Crohn's is like allowing him to be out there. But all he's thinking about is that they finish that job. He has no other work lined up, no job prospects. His son is like just possibly like he may have ruined his son's future, and
this is all happening in his head, right? This is not something that he's sharing with people.
This is why he wanted to leave them, is because he's the stress of all this, and he just wants to go like sit somewhere alone and like watch the water and like
just be in his own bubble kind of thing. Yeah, so he goes off and kind of meanders off down the road and kind of up the river a ways, and then finds himself going up this hill, which he doesn't really describe it as a hill, but it is up. Like you have to go up to get to this plateau or this kind of prairie looking thing area. And the way he describes it is he sees what looks like 2 suns.
Well, first he walks up the hill and he sees the sun.
Right. Well, he sees what looks like the sun before he even sees the light itself of the sun.
The first time he sees it, he thinks it's the sun, though.
No, right. And then he realizes
the
there's
size
multiple.
And the shape and the color is, And then he says like, because like it goes up and down on the way up that hill. And
so it's kind of coming in and out of view.
As you go down and like back up, it comes in and out of view. But then he notices that it's coming in and out of view in an unnatural way that the sun wouldn't.
Right. It's not like a steady, like right there.
And then by the time he gets back up to the top of the hill, then he sees 2.
And there's actually more than 2.
Right.
So he in his head, he's thinking, this can't be the sun. There's not more than one sun, and initially when he first saw it, he kind of backs away and like starts ducking and is like hiding in these tall reeds to try to disguise himself.
He like kind of like jumps down, like back down that hill a little bit, like to get down. So he's like, the hill is giving him cover because they're like out over on the other side of it.
Yeah. He doesn't want them to see it, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Right. And he immediately is just like stricken with fear and doesn't really know what to do. And he's still kind of like staring there looking at it. And he's kind of frozen is what he remembers feeling like. But then he has the thought of like, I need to like, start going like, is this an invasion? Like he starts realizing that these 40-foot wide orbs that he's seeing are very close to him, and there's multiple of them, and they're right here in front of him, and he starts fearing for what this might mean.
He's fearing for his boy.
Right,
he wants to go meet up with his boy and make sure that Junior is doing okay.
Yeah. Because initially he's thinking like this is something serious, and I need to go and check on these guys.
Yeah,
and he talks about it a little bit later on in the podcast, but he talks about it only seeming like 45 minutes maybe that he's been gone at this point.
Well, he said in the book, like, no matter how depressed he wasn't going to leave his son alone out in the wilderness for more than an hour at a time anyway. So he only intended to like walk and sit for a little bit and then come back. And then he thought it had only been maybe that 45.
Right, like he had like this internal time clock. Like I will be back at this time. Like I'm gonna go back now. Like, and if he's sitting there watching these things, thinking that he's not being seen, and then he comes to the realization like, oh shit, like I should go check on my son, or I need to go check on my son, and then he kind of makes his way down the hill, right, and back towards the campfire where the guys now it's dark. Right, they got there when it was still light out. That's why he saw the sun as a kind of a setting sun.
Right,
it's dark now, and the guys are kind of scrambling and freaking out. And he says the campfire is kind of dim now. It's not like full blown like it was when they left. And Chris Jr.'s nowhere to be found.
And they had burned through all the fuel they had gathered, all the other firewood.
Oh yeah, so it wasn't just like it was a fresh fire that just had gone out, and they still had something. No,
it's not like they were just neglecting it. They burned through all the stuff
they were they were keeping it going for as long as they could. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, and so he was kind of confused, and he didn't really think about it at the time because he had other things on his mind, obviously. But the guys are just like, "Where the hell you been?" Like, he's like, "What do you mean? Where's Chris?" And he's like, "Chris went to go look for you." Or I don't remember if they said that specifically, but they were like, "Chris went to go look for you," and. I think they pointed in a direction, and then he was like, all right, because that's like where initially he had gone that direction, but still made his way back in a different direction without being seen, because it's pretty wooded and, rural area. So area. So it's like, so he goes off in the direction of like the cul-de-sac, I believe is the direction.
Yeah.
But it's actually across the road into like a thick, wooded area. And the way he describes it is where he actually found Chris Jr. was like hiding under a pile of like brush that kind of
I think what happens at that point is he starts seeing the orbs again.
Yeah.
And
oh, that's right.
He's like tracking them, and he's like at the same time wondering where Chris is, and then he hears like a very faint voice saying, "Dad."
Yeah, that detail's left out in the YouTube interview. So he hears it, and he kind of goes that direction to find out what it was, because he probably didn't fully make it out, but he...
Yeah. So then that's when he meets up with Chris, and he sees how terrified he is, and he's just like...
shaking. And
he's just shaking. He's like...
fetal position.
Ducked into like plants to like hide, because he saw those things too, and they terrified the crap out of him. Yeah,
so what he described Chris is experiencing, and he didn't really go into much of the detail of what Chris, at least in the interview. I don't know if he does in the book.
He spends a lot talking about
what Chris went through.
Junior.
So what I know of is, Chris saw orbs, and
let's call him Junior. That's what they call him, Junior, and it'll distinguish the two.
Junior and Chris. We'll just call Chris, and Junior. Yeah. So Junior was out looking for his dad. And he starts seeing these orbs, and they're moving around at first, but then they get closer and closer, and then he sees them as eyes, like glowing red eyes, and there's two pairs of them that are locked on to him, and that's when he becomes frozen and fearful, and I think that's when he drops to the ground and kind of gets in the fetal position, but he can't move. Like he is like incapacitated.
He's so terrified and like short of breath that when he called for his dad, like that was all the strength of his voice he could muster.
Yeah, so maybe give us some more detail from the book, because I don't know much more about what Chris went through.
Yeah, well, so Chris, there's
Junior. Sorry.
Yeah, Junior. The whole thing is different for him, because for him it's just terror. The entire thing is terror.
Yeah. Because he can't find his dad. He's off looking for his dad already. That sparks the little bout of terror, because his dad's been gone for hours.
Then he's seeing these orbs that he doesn't know what they are. And then they turn into freaking eyes, and that's some shit out of a freaking horror movie.
Absolutely. Especially if you don't see a body attached, or it's just like a shadowy figure or whatever it might be.
Right. And then he gets Chris and he goes back to the guys and they end up being like, yo, we got to get the fuck out of here.
Mm-hmm. Because they're seeing the orbs as well.
Right.
And I remember from
the
interview, they talk about
that. I don't
once
think they
they're all
saw
back together.
them just yet.
No, because when they all get back together.
Yeah, they start seeing them once they get back together, and then I think when they're heading back to the car.
So when they start heading back to the car, they kind of see these orbs, and they kind of one of them shoots. They see them up high in the sky. There's like 7 or 8 of them, I believe, that they're seeing at this point up in the sky, moving around. Mm-hmm. And then one of them shoots down and lands across the river from them.
Yeah, they see them up in the sky coming together in a single point and then breaking off.
Yeah. And then one of them, because
they're approaching that dead man's turn, and there's a freaking orb right there in the road blocking their way.
Yeah.
And they can't or no, the dead man's turn comes later. But it's blocking
when they've actually gone. Yeah,
it's blocking their way out of the fishing area. Mm-hmm. And the road they're on is the only road without off-roading.
Yeah. And they have to go into the field and kind of
one of the guys they're with knows the people that live in the house in the field just over here. And so they pull off the road and they go towards that house, and it's like a camper, it's like a trailer, and they go up to it. The doors are open, the lights are on. Nobody answers. They call and yell, and nobody answers.
Oh, so they got out of the car and went to the camper
to get out of the car.
They were like going there for like protection to like get away from the things.
Well, they're trying to see if those people are there, if they know what the heck is going on. Like they think like maybe
they think it's the end of the world. Like
they think we're being invaded. Yeah. And so like they want to know if these people know the news or like but
nobody's there.
Nobody's there, but the lights are on. The doors are open.
Ooh, that would give me a chills.
Yeah. And so they eventually and then on that same property there, they hear a gunshot off in the distance, and they try and hone in on where it is, and then they hear it again, and they never see who it comes from, and they're like, dude, we got to get out of here. So they get back in the car and they go back to the road. And the freaking thing is still there. And I forget exactly what happens where it starts pulling towards them like a freaking chicken. It starts like coming at them, and then they think like it's going to hit them, but it pulls up. And so they start going.
They're like, go.
Yeah. And so they're driving home, and one of the guys in the back is the one who lives the furthest away. And he's like, we decided to take him home first.
Yeah, they were fighting. Supposedly they were fighting in the car the entire time. So this actually gives me, because before we get too far away from that, the initial, I did listen to Ryan Bledsoe's podcast. It's called Bledsoe Said So.
Which is a sick name.
Which is a good name for having that name, yeah. For having that last name and using it.
Should we have rhymed something with Glover?
I think we thought about it, but I don't know.
Glover, your mother.
Glover is harder to rhyme with when it comes to like a podcast. I think we tried. Anyway.
If you got any good Glover rhymes,
give us some. Yeah, we're not as creative when it comes to that. So if you are, let us know. So on Bledsoe Says So, Ryan and his buddy Nick talk about, they read the transcript from Chris Bledsoe Sr.'s hypnotic regression.
Yeah. Well, let's not fill that in just yet, because they don't know that.
Well, the only detail I was going to give, only detail I was going to give is that during the regression he remembers, because I don't know, at least this is part of the regression, that he remembers coming back to the car, like almost as if his consciousness had came back during that point. And maybe that's not, I'd love to get the transcript to be able to read it myself, because I just listened to them talking about it. But so he remembers them arguing in the car. Because when he comes back,
that was one of the details, is when he comes back after his like missing time and he walks off and he comes back, he notices, because they had parked the truck like facing out towards where they were going to be fishing,
like,
so that later on they can kick the lights on if they need to or something.
Right.
And when he comes back, he realizes the truck has been moved. It's still close, but it's not in the position in the like
exactly where they left it.
So he's like, why were they driving the truck? It confused him.
Yeah, but anyway, this is actually when they were on their way back. They're in the car. They had all that experience, right? And then on the way back, they're arguing. The two guys are arguing about who gets to go home to see their wife first.
Yes.
And he's remembering this, and during his regression, he's like, shut up! I gotta drive. Like, I'll take both of you guys home. He's like, whoever wins the fight, I'll take you home first, basically.
Yeah. So he's like, we take the biggest guy home. He's the freaking biggest one of us, and he lives the farthest away, and we have to cut back and like track back to take everyone else home after him, but
he wins because he's the biggest, and he's going to beat the shit out of everybody else or something. That was the only detail from the regression that I wanted to bring up. Was say he remembered that specifically,
right?
Like, trying to decide who gets to go home
I believe
first,
as they're driving, they keep encountering the orbs more. They see them flying around,
in the tree lines.
They said like there's one point in the drive where they like drive past like 8 different cars that are pulled off on the side of the road. And like he's like, they're probably staring at these freaking orbs. Or
they've been abducted.
Yeah, so they drop. He drops that guy off, and then they have to go. They had to cross that dead man's bend.
And you were saying that earlier. Yeah.
They have to go back across the dead man's bend again to to get the other guy next. And so they do that, but when they do that, they encounter the orbs at the bend. And
so this is after the first guy's already been dropped off. They come back.
Yeah. And so then they drop off the second guy, and Junior's like, he is just shaking. He's terrified. Like he can hear the fear in his voice and stuff. And he's like, can we not go back home that way? Because that's also, they would have to go back across the bend again to get back to their house. And so he agrees with them, and they drive like the long way around
to get home.
And
you got to just imagine like a rural, like, and they're in North Carolina, right?
Mm-hmm.
A rural North Carolina country roads. Like there's only a few ways to get anywhere fast.
Yeah.
Especially if like, unless otherwise you're just taking some long road.
Dude, this whole thing confused. Did it confuse you when you started hearing the story too? Because they kept talking about Fort Bragg. I was like, that's in California.
Oh yeah. Apparently there's another one there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently it's Fort Liberty now. Anyway.
Oh, okay. Maybe they.
And then he was like, they changed the name to Fort Liberty. I was like, no one told me.
So you're just confused the whole time. Like,
I was like, what the heck? And then I finally realized it was North Carolina.
I wonder why.
Because I was like waiting for the part in the story where he like moves across country, and it never came. And then I finally put it together. It was so dense.
I did remember them talking about Fort Bragg, and I was confused at that because I was like, unless I was like thought Fort Bragg here was something else, and like it was actually a different name. But yeah,
Fort Bragg here in California is a tiny little coastal town that's like up like near the Oregon border, and it's like on the cliffs of the ocean. It's really beautiful out there.
Yeah. But theirs is actually an actual
and it's
fort,
remote,
right?
so like I could see all this type of stuff going on down there, over there. But
isn't Fort Bragg in North Carolina? Isn't that an actual?
Yeah, it's actually
an actual military base.
Yeah. Anyway, let's take our first break, and we'll come back. We'll pick up from when they get back to the house.
Yeah, it gets pretty crazy then.
Yeah. Where's my mouse? Hello, mouse. There you are.
Yeah, we'll see you in a minute.
All right. forgot about this part of this song. That is one of the first beats Carlo and I made. That's the first beat that we put together that we actually turned it into a song, which is cool.
I like that little jazzy
That outro. One didn't make our album, but
oh really?
It's got a special place in my heart still.
Called Dream World.
Yeah.
Which is what Chris and Junior are living in.
Yeah, dude. I dropped that in, and I was dropping it in because it was like the next one in line in the rotation to bring back in.
Yeah.
And I dropped it, and I was like, dude, another freaking song title matching up with what we're talking about.
Synchronicities.
Crazy.
Can't shake them.
So Drew already drank his beer for the night, so we don't have a beer review.
Nah, and it was just one of my standard Sierra Nevada
I'm
hazy
still not drinking.
IPAs.
I'm about a week and a half into keto now, down 7 pounds.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's go.
So I can review this LaCroix sparkling water beach plum. It's pretty tasty.
Beach plum, huh?
Beach plum. Try this.
Is it sandy?
If it was authentic, it should be.
I like sparkling waters. That's actually really good.
You're not crazy about them, though?
Not you. Well, I do like some of them. LaCroix hasn't been my favorite.
Yeah.
But that actually tasted like a Capri Sun.
Oh, kind of. Yeah.
Tastes like I don't know which flavor, but it tastes like a Pacific Cooler. That's what it was. The Pacific Cooler Capri Sun is what it tastes like to me. If you know, you know.
Yeah. What it made me think of is those old clearly Canadian drinks back in the day. Did you ever have those?
I don't think so.
Back when Mom used to take us to Children's World, the one off San Juan.
Clearly Canadian.
There was a coffee shop right next to it.
I remember the coffee shop.
We would go to the coffee shop, and she would get us drinks and stuff sometimes, and they always had these bottled, I think they were sparkling waters.
Maybe.
Clearly Canadians.
I don't remember the name of them. I probably did taste it. Or have them.
I don't even know if that brand's still around.
I was real young at the time. I was back when I was probably 3-4 years old. Clearly Canadian sparkling water.
Yep, sparkling water.
Nice. That does look well.
I mean,
the bottle
the bottle that's behind there is what the old classic bottle looked like.
That I remember.
Yeah,
that I do remember.
Now
that's what sparkling waters used to look like. Oh yeah, there you go.
These.
Yep. I do remember those.
Yeah,
and I remember it was like the metal tops where when you cracked it, would go give you a more satisfying opening experience.
I don't even know if I realized I was just drinking sparkling water at the time.
Probably not,
because for me it was so tasty. It was like juice.
Mama's smart though.
I know, right? She's like, "Oh, you want one of that? Okay,
yeah,
you can have that."
She would get those for us all the time. Like, "Oh yeah, these are the best. All the kids are drinking these." She's always a step ahead of us,
dude. Yeah, that's funny.
So where were we? Let's get back into this.
So we were
at the getting them home.
They were just about to get home. Yeah. So. And by the way, obviously we're going to be doing a much worse job of
describing
portraying all this than you can just go listen to Chris and Ryan's episodes on the Danny Jones. You can listen to Ryan's podcast
or listen or read their book, his book, UFO God.
What was it called? Bledsoe
Said So.
Oh, God, it's so
good.
That
is catchy.
And, the book too is UFO from God, and that's what I've been listening to. So there's all those sources, and I'll link to all of them. So check them out and get it from the from
the source. This is just going to be two guys talking about it again.
We just want to set all this up so that we can talk about openly what we think about it. Yeah. Anyway, so they get home and they think they're pretty much safe, right? Like they go inside, they turn on the news. They turn on the TV to see like
if there's any news.
And there's not. It's just like a normal day. And
they're thinking it's like world of.
They're expecting to turn on the TV and be like
world stuff.
Yeah,
going
like
on.
emergency broadcasts. We are being invaded by aliens.
Right, because it was just all so vivid and real, and like all happening specifically to them, but they didn't know that.
So then, so Junior is still like just terrified. He will not leave his dad's side.
Yeah, they say he goes in, turns on all the lights,
all the inside and outside lights, shuts the blinds, even turns on the bathroom lights where they don't have like an outside window.
Just
to have everything on.
See anything that happens.
Yeah,
is basically.
And then they're kind of like chilling, and the rest of the family is like out of town until like the upcoming weekend.
I was gonna say because it's just the two of them.
It's just the two of them at the house, and then Chris wants to have a smoke, and Junior's like, no,
don't go out there. Pleading with him,
because he's like, well, all right, I won't go outside. I'll just smoke in here. But he wanted to open the window, and
because they have like a sunroom.
Junior's like, no.
He had to open the blinds in order to get the window because he wanted to. It was like a sunroom, I guess, was like his study, and he was opening the blinds and to blow the smoke out of a window.
Right,
he just had to have his cigarette.
Right, and when he opens the blinds, he
sees the glowing. I believe he said he saw an orb again, I can't remember if he saw an orb that turned into an entity or if the entity was already there.
Yeah, he saw.
But he saw the 7 foot tall entity out the window.
That's right.
And before, and immediately, he was fear stricken. And being a father, he didn't want to worry his son even further.
He didn't tell Junior.
So all he does is just quickly close the blinds and put out his cigarette and go back in with him.
But then, and they live on the property right next to his dad's house, who has a bunch of dog kennels.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all the dogs in the dog kennels start barking like crazy. Like,
there's a lot of dogs
because
apparently.
He grew up on his dad's property there, raising those dogs with his dad. He knows, like, he's heard him his whole life, and he knows like the tones of the dog. Like, if you have a dog, you know, like you can tell the difference between like a fear bark and like a get out of my territory bark, and like, you know, like this was like a fear bark.
Yeah, and he immediately thought that the house was being broken into, or their shed, or their garage. Well, at
first he thought it was like a bear or something, and then there was something about the garage. It
was like they had a shed out next to the house, and he assumed that the dogs were barking because they've done it before, where like if there was somebody messing around with their stuff,
right,
that they would bark and alert.
And so, because I guess the dad's out of town too or something, he's like, we need to go check on this and make sure none of his stuff has gotten stolen.
Right.
And so they bring their dog, who's been trained a trained hunting dog, and Junior's like, no. But he's like, no, we got to do this. Like, we can't let this happen to your grandpa's place. And so Junior comes with him and is like holding on to him.
Because he doesn't want to go anywhere without him, but he doesn't want to go either.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they send the dog around to like flush out whoever might be on the other side of the thing. And then they kind of run around the other way, try and see if they can catch anyone. And they don't catch anyone.
Yeah. So and
then he sees the dogs are all barking towards these woods on the side of the property.
Right. Instead of looking where he initially thought they would have been looking,
which would be towards the garage in one direction, they're all pointed the other way.
Yeah.
Barking that way.
Yeah, and so eventually the dog does flesh something out. And not flesh something out, but something comes up. And at this point, Chris Sr. thinks or is following the path that they said they were going to take to cut off whatever it might be. And he thinks that Junior is right on his tail.
Right. And then
holding on to him still.
He only realizes
he's
later
heightened sense.
Junior had ran back home.
Yeah. I mean, as soon as things started getting scary, Junior turned around, ran back inside, locked the door, shut the blinds, kept all the lights on. And Chris is now on his own out there. And the dog is still coming around. And what he describes as an orb comes at him through the woods.
Yeah.
And is...
as it approaches, it the shape of it changes
into what he now saw as eyes.
Junior had seen earlier,
which are these eyes. Yeah,
which that's the first time Chris had seen the eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think he's got more missing time there.
This is when he first sees the small person, the 3-foot entity, and he immediately like freezes or has some kind of experience, like missing time experience with it.
Mm-hmm.
And but then he goes back into the house. I can't remember if he has that full blown like quote unquote conversation with it where it tells it's not here to hurt them.
It's missing time again.
Well, I know actually I believe this is the time where he brings a gun with him because he's an avid hunter,
right.
And he bringing the gun. Once the thing comes at him, he believes that like it's over, like I'm dead, like this thing's gonna take me and stuff.
Right.
And he doesn't bring the gun up though, and instead has this thought of like, what am I doing? Like I have no chance of surviving this kind of thing.
Right.
And he basically surrenders to whatever it is, these eyes, this entity, and he says, "I'm sorry, I won't hurt you like this," and the thing speaks to him. I don't know if it's verbally or if it's just in his head. Mm-hmm. And it says, "No, you don't understand. We're here to help."
Right.
And that's when I believe he has this missing time kind of like interaction with this thing.
Oh, I want to go back to the car. Mm-hmm. Because on one of the dead man's turns,
one of those,
the orb occasions was hovering right where his wife had died.
Mm.
And he like got this vibe, this like knowing understanding of it trying to tell him that it wasn't his fault, because this whole time in his life he had thought that his jealousy got his wife killed. Somehow, this was the first time he was able to see it in a new light, which was that this was a gift to the both of them to be able to like spend their last moments together in each other's arms. Without
the what would have been like a jealousy, rage-filled meeting if he had made it back, and then that would have transpired anyways, right? So imagine him making it back to the party, mm-hmm. and then having a fight,
right?
And then their last moment is them fighting instead of this,
right?
Because she eventually would have had to drive there, and that might have happened no matter what.
Yeah.
Right? It might have been something that was just destined to happen if you mm-hmm. believe in that, right? Or right. If it's something that was just going to happen because whatever state of mind she was in.
I mean, I can totally empathize with him seeing it that way, though. Yeah. And I know that if I was in that position, like that's exactly what would be going through my head.
That's a human
is that quality. If I hadn't left and I gotten all jealous, I could have been there at the party, and she would have been there too, and then she wouldn't have had to leave then.
Right.
And this
and
whole
you spin
thing,
it to be your fault.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of similar to like the idea of like he kind of surrenders to this thing that's in front of him. And I think, as far as what
I don't think he gets communication there. The communication comes on.
He does get though at that moment. That all he does. That's the is he surrenders to it and saying, "I won't hurt you," basically, or "I surrender to you." And then it says, "No, you don't understand.
We're here to help."
And that's when it kind of ends, and he goes back, and it goes away.
Right, and then the dog starts barking.
Dog comes through, and then it goes away.
Right.
The dog actually finally catches up. And it goes away. And then he goes back into the house with Chris.
Right.
It doesn't tell him anything because he doesn't want to scare him anymore.
But they're both terrified.
Yeah.
And so they actually leave the house and they go sleep in the truck in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere.
In the middle of nowhere because they believe
because they're too scared.
They want to be able to see around them.
Spend that night at home.
So crazy, yeah.
And anyway, so that's their first experience.
That's day one, first night.
So Junior's experience is just terror. Yeah. He starts having nightmares. He starts it's bad.
Starts spiraling.
Chris, he tries to communicate it, but every time he tries to communicate it to someone, no one believes him. And they don't take him seriously.
He's dealing with the devil, or because it's a very religious town.
Also because of the failure of his business and his life going downhill and him losing his mansion with his kids and ending up back at
home with his parents on their land or something,
Right. So he's he has been losing his reputation in the community.
Yeah.
And that's why he was having such a hard time getting work, is because everyone in the community didn't trust him. Yeah. And so everyone thought he had gone crazy.
Or he was doing drugs or whatever it might have been.
Right.
That they were,
so they don't believe him.
Yeah. And he goes to the church that he goes to, and starts telling them about it.
And they tell him that he's
got to stop talking about it, or
you're
else
talking
you can't
about
come
demons.
Here.
Like, you need to get that out of here. Like,
Yep. Yeah, they initially, like,
to the extent they believe him, they believe it's demons, if anything. And so,
which is kind of telling in itself. Like, it somewhat seems like they believe him, but that what he's dealing with is demonic. But if you were religious, you know, in a town like that, where it's, you know, it's very like one religion kind of a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And you start hearing this person, and if you start believing it, like, wouldn't that give you some kind of, like, even if it is demonic, as they believe, you start believing it in some way, right?
I mean,
if you're going to tell them that
we're talking like conservative Southern,
unless they're just putting it all on drugs,
and rural like area mindset, where everyone knows everyone, and we're talking like traditional, like, no, he's not at the Baptist.
They're Pentecostal.
They're Pentecostal because it's his wife's church that he goes to. He grew up in a Baptist church, which I thought was boring. But the Pentecostals, they take what he experienced as demons. Everyone else judges him, scrutinizes him, calls him crazy or a drug addict, and
the story just goes out because apparently the guys that were there too,
they go back and talk to those guys, and they go over the thing. Like,
they're like, yeah, we saw it all. Like, it happened.
Yeah,
you know?
Right.
Yeah, but they are fearful to speak after what happens to him and his family, because he's so immediately trying to, like, let people know what just happened. Like, and obviously the day after this, something happens and the world is still the same. Mm-hmm. Unless you're living in an alternate dimension, right? Where everybody did experience it, but you're the only one who remembers it. Like some kind of like crazy Mandela effect where everything, like, your world just imploded, but now you're in another world where nobody experienced what you just did.
Right.
Even though everybody might have in this other dimension.
There's a lot of moments in life that can feel that way, though.
Sure. But yeah, so the next day and weeks and months and years go by. What
happens, though, is in the aftermath of this, his Crohn's completely disappears.
Oh yeah, and that's actually like the next day he describes.
Oh, there was details on the Crohn's too in the book.
Oh yeah, let me hear about it.
So he wasn't just dealing with Crohn's, which he was dealing with Crohn's.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and this is the other reason people thought he might have been crazy. So he was dealing with Crohn's, and it was so bad, and his doctor was telling him that, look, if you keep trying, like, this is what convinced him to sell the company. It's like, if you keep doing what you're doing, like, the stress of it is going to kill you.
Right.
Like, you don't have long left with the progression of this.
With stress added on top of it.
Right. And so he's like, I would like you to go see this psychiatrist. And so he recommends a psychiatrist to him. So he goes to the psychiatrist.
This is after the events or before?
This is before. And the psychiatrist talks to him, blah, 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 and then, like, prescribes him a bunch of drugs, like 3 or 4 different prescriptions. One of them is lithium. And it keeps, like, upping his doses and stuff. And over, like, the next few months while he's on this stuff, he just gets sicker and sicker and sicker until he ends up passing out. And they rush him to the hospital, and he basically almost died from lithium poisoning because the psychiatrist.
Oh, that's right. That was one of his NDEs.
That was one of them. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Because the doctor was overprescribing the prescription and actually died of it himself.
Yes.
That's right. I do remember that detail. And he was overprescribing, like tens of people he had killed because he was overprescribing this stuff.
Right.
And that's right.
They didn't end up, like, going and suing the family and stuff because the doctor was dead and his family could only be harmed by them doing that. So like, they let it go. But, like, he had to now recover from Crohn's and from lithium poisoning.
That's right.
Which was a long process for him. And so he's coming out of this like mental fog.
Which people know about because it's a small town and people talk and it's only so many psychiatrists in the area.
So that just like adds adding fuel to the fire for why his community doesn't believe him.
So they're just thinking he's the odd man, the black sheep in the community that's like having all these bad things happen.
He's just a fuck up in everything in his life.
Yeah.
He touches, he destroys. He's got drug problems
because the business was his father's too before, but then his father retires and he takes it over, and that's when it starts going downhill. So everybody's looking at him like, "Oh, you fucked it all up," and your family was living so good,
and that business was like providing for like jobs and the economy there in the area, and so people were bitter at him when he ran it into the ground and ended up selling it to people who ended up fucking it over anyway.
Sure.
So like the community was pissed at him for multiple reasons. Like he had lost status all leading up to this. Yeah. So now you got this guy that everyone like doesn't quite see the same. And he has this crazy encounter.
Right.
And no one will believe him.
Yeah.
And then even his wife just doesn't want to talk about it.
Just won't talk about it, yeah. With him specifically.
Yeah, well, she's like, he really praises her in the book for like her patience. He basically is like saying like she's like keeping this balancing act of like keeping their attachment to the church while also like showing him patience, but at the same time she just doesn't want him to talk about it.
But she doesn't outright deny it or like call him make him feel as if she doesn't believe him.
But the way she acts makes him feel like she doesn't believe him.
Of course, because she doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't want to. Yeah. She doesn't want to experience it like the kids.
But she's not telling him that she doesn't believe him.
Right. Because in the next 5 years after this happens, the whole family sees these orbs all over, anywhere, like everywhere they go. Yeah,
well, him and Junior had seen him multiple times. Then one of the other kids, I'm not sure if it was Ryan or the other son, Jeremy, one of them sees it with him. So they see him a couple times, and anytime Junior experiences anything, it's just pure terror for him.
Yeah, it brings back the trauma from that night.
But the other kid was like excited about it.
I know Ryan's super excited about it. I don't know much about Jeremy. So
yeah. So then they basically fast forward a couple years of like them being heavily scrutinized, right?
Yeah, and their kids are being bullied at school by other kids and teachers and stuff.
And then they get he's like reaches this tipping point where he feels like he has to talk about it, and he reaches out to MUFON, and MUFON gets involved, and they end up at that time they're signing up to do this show, this TV special with Discovery Channel about UFOs. Yeah. And the idea is that they're going to like live and investigate some of their open cases on the show.
Right.
And they reach out to Chris and they want him to tell his story as part of the show, and he ends up agreeing to it.
But he disagreed for a long time, right? Wasn't it like?
Yeah, well, he was like really nervous about even ever talking to anyone before he even called the MUFON people in the first place, because
but even then
the agreement with his wife is we're not talking about this. And so investigators from MUFON showing up on their property and asking questions is like against their agreement.
Yeah, the way he was talking about it on there, he was like, I finally reached out, and then I was getting calls upon calls upon calls for people who just wanted to come and talk to me,
right,
and be on my property and talk about it. But he's like, I'm trying to distance my family away, or at least his wife, like trying to keep it away from where they live and stuff. So he was like, telling him, no,
trying to be a protective dad. He's got one son who's terrified of all this stuff. He's got the younger kids at the time
and his community,
and then he's got his wife who doesn't want to like
engage with it,
right? Yeah. And anyway, so it turns out that the documentary with discovery is like the worst decision he ever made.
Yeah.
Because they basically ambush him. So in the like sales pitch of him signing up, they're like, yeah, we want to help you guys. And so like, if you guys agree to be a part of this, we will take care of trauma counseling for your children. And they even like promised to like buy them lunch the day they were there filming. And that was like a big deal to them because they were so broke that they only ever ate at home or at their grandparents' place.
Cool.
Yeah. So like the kids were all excited about that. And then the day comes and someone had calls the day before, asked for like a hotel recommendation, which he gives them. And then tells them that they're going to meet at like 8:30 in the morning. And so the family's all excited. Everyone's excited because the way they see it is like, this is their chance to get their story out in a way that someone is going to take them seriously. And people are going to see that they aren't just a bunch of like scam artist liars. Right.
Not that they're making money off of this before or something. Like.
Right. And so, 8:30 in the morning comes around, nothing happens. Another like half hour goes by, and they finally get a call from the producers, and they're like, hey, can you come meet us at our hotel, which is not the hotel he recommended. And he's like, why? They go to this hotel, and someone meets him in the lobby because they never told him like who to meet or who to call or what room to go to. He's just standing there like, well, I'm here.
Right.
Someone finds him like, Chris, hey, why don't you come with us? And leaves his wife behind. So the two of them had gone and left the kids at home. And so he follows this guy into the room, and he walks in, and it's a freaking group of people sitting around looking at him, and they want him to do a lie detector test.
Right on the spot. And they just ambush him with that.
Jeez.
And
that's his first encounter with these people.
Jeez. I can't believe that wouldn't have set him off to turn around and walk away. But they were looking for help. Like, they were desperate for help at this point, yeah.
So he does it, and, he's nervous through it because this is, like, weird, crazy pressure to be in. Mm-hmm. And anyway, the whole thing is just, it's bad, and people don't ask him meaningful questions. They barely come look at his property. They barely ask him, like, for any of the details, and then they're just out of there. Mm-hmm.
And so as a part of that, though, they do this sleep regression, this hypnotic sleep regression.
They do, yes.
That's part of this Discovery documentary.
That's the first regression that he's had, yeah. And that unlocks some of his memories from that night.
And so this is like supposedly an hour and a half long regression that he goes through, and they only used in the actual documentary like between 90 seconds and like a few minutes of it. And the clips that they used are like the most, like they take it completely out of context supposedly. And they used like only the most outlandish stuff that he says because it's audio recorded, this regression. And what I heard is just like a transcript, like a recording transcript of it. And so the regression itself was basically about the Cape Fear incident, and
so specifically this is that regression.
It's that regression
that Ryan shared?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So this might be a perfect time to go over it. Yeah, this is
the perfect time for that.
So it's basically about the Cape Fear incident, and specifically the time that he had lost, that he didn't realize he lost, but lost. Multiple hours. I think it was 4 hours that they figured out that he lost. Between when he left to go and saw them, and by the time he got back to the group.
Right.
And I wish I had the transcript in front of me to read it, but basically the transcript is talking about when he saw, from the time he saw the light, he was frozen in place and sat there, or was taken into the craft, like this craft, quote unquote craft, but the way he describes it in the regression is like a ball of light that he's being brought into. And if you think about like a teardrop shape, like glass is what it looked like to him. Like it was translucent and he could see out into the sky. Like they brought him up high into the sky, and they were talking to him about how he is like they're here to help him, and that they are basically like they are the I don't remember how they describe themselves, but they are the entities that work for the mother, is what they described it as, or told him. And this mother is basically like the comforter, you know, as told in biblical scriptures and stuff. Like they called her, what's the name? Why didn't I not write it down?
What did they call her? They called her the lady.
The lady, but her actual name that they refer to her as. Yeah. And it's like an Egyptian. It's like an Egyptian goddess.
Oh, that's so interesting, because I put that together. He doesn't actually go into that in the book. At least at this point in the book, he might save it for later. He just talks about how the regression helped him recall some stuff and gave him some peace and helped him remember that these people, or that these entities aren't here to hurt him.
Yeah, so that's basically, I really do wish I was going to try to like take the audio from the podcast and like put it into a transcript and just read it, but they jump around so much and like it'd be hard to do that.
Well, we're over for another break, so maybe I can do a quick search and see if I have any luck.
Yeah, we could try. Let's see. We'll take a break and we'll come back, see if we have anything for you.
Because I would like to hear that little segment.
I would like to.
All right, cool. We shall be back in just a moment for you, but for us, depends how long this search goes, or if we give up. Welcome back. What are you trying to
I was pointing at Dean because look at the name of the song.
Oh my God. This one's called God Bless the Child. Which I'm pretty sure I just stole from the name of the song that I sampled for that, because I never like actually put this song out. This is just a beat I made. And I'll be super lazy with my beat names like that. Like I'll just name it whatever the song I sampled is called, so until it gets to a point where like
it's different
someone
enough.
is putting lyrics to it and it's taking on its own like
sense.
Personality. So
during that break, we did do some clever.
We did some digging.
We found we basically went to the podcast Bledsoe Said So and pulled little clips, and we basically just got a bunch of tabs open of different spots in the episode that go into the transcript instead of just all the
we'll link to the episode itself because you guys should check it out because it's like me skipping through it. I'm like, oh, I want to listen to this whole thing, but I don't have time right now. We're in the middle of our own podcast. But
because Ryan does have some interesting insights, and he does want to talk about some stuff that maybe it's just not as interesting for this because he just wants to talk about his own view on things. But but it is interesting because he is so close to the topic, so you should definitely listen to it.
Cool. So
queued up.
And what we realized in doing this is that we were mixing up 2 of the podcast episodes because what we were going into it searching for was the part where he was talking about the lady, which have we even covered that yet?
Well, specifically because during the time when this Discovery documentary happened with the MUFON group, he did a regression, and that first regression that he did was specifically about the Cape Fear incident, when the initial incident where he had lost time. But he had another time later on, years later, where he had an incident where he met the lady. And if you listen to the podcast on Danny Jones, or if you
are you sure that was a regression, or he just talked about it?
Because so they did a regression. You're talking about the lady one?
Yeah.
So he did a regression because he was asked to by the investigators at the time. He was asked to do a regression because they thought that there might be details that were left out.
Yeah.
But he does consciously remember it, and he didn't need. And before the regression happened, he was telling the story of what happened to him with the lady. But he did the regression just basically to kind of humor them and to recall small details that maybe he wouldn't have. Yeah. So maybe there are details in there that aren't said in the book either. So. Right. We'll go over that maybe in another
what we're going to cover right now is that first regression.
Yeah. This is back at Cape Fear, and so basically
this is him unlocking his memories of his
the lost time.
We're kind of like a ways into it now, so this is not the whole thing. And then just to set it up also the way they set it up, which is they don't have the actual audio recording of this. They just have some sort of like text to speech or speech to text transcript, which isn't perfect because it was computer generated. And so
at the time they were using
their reading of it is a little bit weird and broken up. And then they keep pausing to like have their conversation in the podcast and like spin off on talking about that. And so go listen to the podcast to get all that.
Which we might do in between some of these clips too, but
that's exactly what we're going to do.
Because it's a podcast as well. This is basically podcast inception.
Yeah. Podcast inside a podcast here. All right, so this is the first one I found that I was like, we need to let's start here. All right, so here we go.
Michael says, they've been here since before you were born. Were they with you in another lifetime? Chris, yes, before I was born. I didn't have to speak to talk to them.
And we also didn't set up that, like, because we're a little ways into this already, this is him already on. He's been abducted, he's on the craft, and now he's having a conversation I guess telepathically.
So I sort of set it up with my crude retelling of the regression, but this is them a ways in when he's having this telepathic conversation with the entities, and this Michael person that they keep bringing up is the person doing the regression.
Regressing him. Yeah.
They're in my thoughts. Are you angels? Light, creation. I believe in God. Okay, I create you. Yes, they do everything. So you are in angels. Don't answer that. They just work for creation. Better, my son's fine. Michael, how did the same ones that you saw in your backyard lay...
This was on the TV. This was the line.
How did the...
Okay, so... Dude, that line right there. So it was like, so you're angels? What was that?
It said,
we're creation.
We are creation. We are light.
Right.
And then it says, so you are in angels. And he said, don't answer. It said, don't answer that. We create you.
Right.
So basically, it almost sounds like they aren't what might be thought of as gods, but they are on a plane above what we are existing at.
Yeah.
They are still below.
They're small G gods.
Like they work for creation is kind of what they're saying.
Yeah, like these are like the gods, like the gods in the past, where there's the they're up on their Mount Olympus here, right? And
they are the gods of this earth in a sense. Like they're the ones responsible.
Like they have godlike power and control here, but like they aren't the ones who put the universe into motion.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. They're not capital G.
Right. Cool. So
we'll go to the next one then.
Yeah. So this is the next piece.
Are all their eyes black? Chris, they look alike. Michael, do their children look like their parents? Chris, yes, sort of. They're glowing. They have protection on. Michael, have they been in your home? Chris, regularly. Michael, how long have they been there? Chris, since I was little. They're invisible. Michael, if they're invisible, how do you know when they're in your home? Chris, I just knew. I wondered what it was. Michael, are they with you now? Chris, they're looking after me. Michael, are they guardians for your family? Are they looking after your entire family? Chris, yes, and they have been for generations. I never knew that. I just wondered. Michael, how does that make you feel? Chris, happy, relaxed. It's like electricity. The hair stands up on my arms and legs. Michael, were there beings with red eyes? Chris, the children have red eyes. That's protection. They have a suit on, transparent, glass, learning. They're learning about us. Lifeguards.
They're learning
Michael,
about us.
Why are they wearing them? Chris, they travel everywhere, into different worlds. They wear them until a certain age, learn to use their abilities. There's not just one universe.
Damn!
So pause it there. So what that makes me think of, just right off the bat, is like, so there are children and adults of these beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are somehow, they are not physically here, and they're not physically, but they are here, right? They send, so that line that they talk about later is the line that they use in the Discovery documentary is they let the children out to play. And we know from from what I listened to on the podcast and probably in the book that the Bledsoe family has experienced all of these different poltergeist-like experiences within their home where things are moving and things are happening all the time. And he has this and they're just sense
they're just like
they're there,
little children gods
playing,
who think it's funny to mess with humans,
knock stuff over and open a cabinet and slam it. Like they can physically have, and these are them learning their power, right? Because they aren't physical manifestations, right? They don't have they can't physically grab the door, and these are powers that they have, and they're learning to use them. And that's like that line, like they are the children, we let them out to play. And it's almost like because Chris has this this somehow mental connection to it and is able to actually experience it and see it for what it is, in a sense, like they feel comfortable enough to come out and play around him and to come out and let him experience them because he can. Right. Like otherwise other humans that are in this material world and are kind of dug in and just believe the world to be the way it is and that there's no other higher level to experience, they can't experience it even if those things are happening around them. Yeah.
So I was telling Dad about the episode we're going to do tonight.
Oh yeah.
And we started talking about it a little bit at the office. Mm-hmm. And he was like, I just don't get, like, if they're trying to like get a message out, like why do they just choose some like random dude? Right. Like what makes this guy so special? Like why, like I just don't. That's what I don't understand. Like, you know, and that kind of like goes back to a lot of people's things. Like, why don't they land on the White House longer? If they got a freaking message for us, just freaking make themselves be known and give us the message. But it seems like Chris is different because of all of these like issues he's gone through. I think it has done something to his body, to his brain, to his sensitivity because of these like out of body experiences and near death experiences and all this activity that's been going on through his life. It has somehow made him sensitive in a way where he wouldn't necessarily have been otherwise.
Right. And he, you know, has these experiences with these entities where he cries out to them in these times of like need and sadness. And that's when they come to him in a manifestation form where they actually are presenting themselves in a somewhat physical way to him. Right. And they allow him, they get like, he gets to this point,
relax their fucking,
their like, rules or whatever it is.
Their invisibility cloak, like Harry Potter, and they like allow you to see them.
Yeah. Because the people around him aren't actually seeing
he's
it, though.
Sensitive to it, right?
Right, because the people immediately around him aren't seeing it. Right, so they are experiencing what he's experiencing through him.
I think it depends on the person. It depends on like your interaction to it. Like, I think you have to like believe it's possible.
Right. And so the reason his kids and the people immediately around him are sensitive,
or you have to be around someone who is sensitive and then they're seeing it can like rub off on you.
Exactly. Because you got to think about like in a previous episode, we talked about like and just now we'll talk about like the idea of like nature and nurture. Right. So if you're living in this world and your entire being ever since the day you were born and have the ability to learn things has been taught that what is real and what is possible.
Right.
So if from a young impressionable age, like Emily or Ryan, when they're real young and their dad is talking about all these things that are esoteric to the rest of society, they're brought up believing that these things are possible. So it gives them another connection. So they're able to see these orbs. They're not seeing the entities pop up in front of them. Yeah. But like Ryan talks about in some of his in some of his episodes, like he's experienced things that are like more than dreams or instances where he feels like he's lost time and like he has like weird experiences like in the house where even Emily, the youngest, the daughter, has experienced the poltergeist like activity in their house where things are moving and even later his wife, Chris goes and prays saying, let her experience you. And she is shoved in the back by something while she's in the kitchen cooking. And, you know, she makes the joke of like, don't ever pray for me again because she didn't like it.
Jeremy or Ryan or like her and the little kids
talk about it all the time.
Had an experience together. And then she told them not to tell Chris and Junior because she didn't like, she felt they didn't need to be like worked up more.
Yeah.
And so she had been holding on to that.
Her own experience.
Yeah. And she had never actually gotten the entire story from Chris either because she was like so hesitant. Like it freaked her out and she wanted to like not talk about it. It's like, I get that feeling. It's like when you talk about something, you're making it more real.
Right.
So I understand that
sentiment.
The
more you talk about it.
Yeah.
And she's so rooted in her beliefs, right? She's been rooted in this belief structure that she's grown up with. It's hard to just pry somebody out of that.
Right.
You have to really be primed and ready to receive this information, it seems like, the way they're describing their experiences.
Yeah.
Like Danny Jones on their podcast. They went out the night before the podcast aired and he saw orbs. Yeah. And he could differentiate what he knew to be planes from this orb that looked like it rose out of the ocean and then vanished back into the horizon. And like, you know, it's hard to tell because it's at night and they show they actually took video from the night and show the images on the podcast. Well,
he also said there's also other weird stuff like they have this tree in their backyard.
Oh yeah.
And this tree caught on fire from the inside, and I'll leave a link to the YouTube video because they actually got that on camera.
Yeah.
And they had a researcher, an ex-MUFON researcher, because he kind of had a falling out with MUFON after a while, but not all the like individual investigators. Oh, whoops.
We're on a break. No, I'm just kidding.
No, we're not on a break yet. You guys won't even hear that came up, but We just heard our music come up, but we're not done talking.
No, we're not. Go away, stranger.
Oh, that one works too.
Dude, what is happening?
All right, so I lost my train of thought, though. Maybe we should just...
No, you're talking about the ex-MUFON investigator
the
burning tree.
Took a sample of the burning tree and sent it off to some contacts at MIT, and they tested it, and there was no evidence of a lightning strike.
Right.
And it was raining the night that the tree caught fire.
It wasn't raining.
No, it was.
Oh, it was? I thought they said it wasn't raining.
I thought
they said that there was no rain in the sky for like the days before it.
Right.
So like lightning could happen, but rain, there was no like obvious sign that it had been that those conditions were like it wasn't cloudy or anything, like especially with the video you see.
My memory is telling me it was raining, but maybe I'm wrong.
I remember them saying it specifically wasn't raining at the time.
But they said there specifically wasn't any lightning though.
Yeah, they definitely said that. Yeah. And just watching the video, and we'll show go and look at it, pause and go and look at it. But it's like, it's so weird. Like you see an opening of the tree, and then when they get close and like zoom in on it, like you see the inside of the tree while the outside is pretty much intact.
Yeah.
The tree, and it did this multiple times. You have to step
up your video editing here.
Put some actual video in there.
At this point, yeah, you should drop
down.
the actual video.
I'll do it. Yeah, no, that would be a perfect time to have the video playing in the background. If you're going to watch it on YouTube, you'll be able to see the video playing.
On the podcast, you'll have to click the link.
Yeah.
I'll have a snapshot of the burning tree here, but if you click the link...
It's on their YouTube or something, or not their YouTube. It's on their Instagram.
Yeah, no, it's on their YouTube. Yeah.
Oh, the video of the burning tree? Okay,
yeah.
then that'll be easy.
It's on YouTube, yeah.
I can clip it straight off of there then. Yeah, that'll be easy.
Anyway, so... that's interesting stuff. Let's go on to the next clip here. Did we play two?
Yeah. There are other universes? Chris, that's what they say. Other dimensions. Michael, do they come from other universes? Other dimensions? Chris, they can go anywhere. Through time. Other dimensions. I promise. Michael, are they talking to you again? Chris, yes. Michael, where is their home? Chris, no place we know of. A dimension just a second away. Whenever they want to be here. Michael, why did they come here to this earth? Chris, to learn balance. It's almost like a garden to them. Michael, what is it that they balance? Chris, existing life of all kinds, everything, to measure all details. For eons they've been doing that. Not just here. A lot of places. In the blink of an eye, there, in and out. I'm tired and I want to go home. Michael, where's your home, Chris? Chris, far away, beyond Andromeda.
Now let me just stop you there. I want to give...
All right, yeah, so they flew him in 4 hours of missing time. According to this, they flew him beyond Andromeda. So obviously we are not talking about traveling through space, because it's impossible to travel through space faster than the speed of light, according to what we know now.
We're talking about moving through superspace.
We're talking about moving through superspace like in Einstein's intuition last week. Or just warp drive, some sort of warp, some sort of gravitational thing. Because as long as it's space that you're moving through when you're speeding up, then you are subject to relativity and time dilation effects, and traveling that far, that fast, he would lose more than 4 hours. He would lose like decades, because he would be beyond the speed of light at that point.
So it must not be moving through space then.
How far is Andromeda?
It couldn't be, if that's true, then it couldn't have been that they moved him through space, because otherwise he would have experienced more time loss.
Right.
So it was more of probably a is still in and out.
Right.
Like the capsule.
What I'm interested, well, one of the things I'm interested in is I wonder if his lost time was a combination of what he was doing with them, and another part of it was like maybe some relativity effects.
or his body never left. And only his consciousness traveled.
Right.
So if you're talking about something that is not physical, traveling through space, which we don't know that has an effect on consciousness the same way it'll affect the body.
Yeah.
Right. So if your consciousness comes back,
see, but Junior was looking for him. So like, if his consciousness was gone for 4 hours, you would think he would be like laying or standing or somewhere.
Well, he was
his
laying.
physical body would be still here on this planet to be found by his son.
Yeah, but his son didn't know, because remember, he went off in one direction, but ended up where he saw the things was a different direction. So his son thought, but
his son did end up going that way too, though. I
don't know. Did he?
He did, yeah, because that's where he ended up finding his son. His son had ended up going that direction because he couldn't find him in the direction he saw him originally walk off to.
What I remember is his son was found somewhere completely different from where he had his experience.
No, so like, it's hard for me to reconstruct this because I don't have like the map of it or anything, but let's just paint a picture in our mind. Let's just say, for instance, left and right. He started off searching left, for instance, okay? Or when he walked away from the group, he walks to the left, okay? Mm-hmm. And he goes off that way, and then he ends up walking back to the right across them, but in a way that they don't see him do it. So he ends up on the right, and that's where he has his experience. And then when he comes back...
He comes from the right.
He asked them, and they said Junior went off looking, and he had already looked to the left, and then he had gone and looked back to the right. That was my understanding.
Yeah, I don't remember them specifically,
because he was close
which
to
directions.
He was close to the like cul-de-sac, the dead end that they had parked.
That's where they found Junior, right?
Right, that was where they found Junior.
And I remember that not being where because he had to go up this hill, which is very
but that was the
wooded.
first direction he went.
Right. I mean, it was all. We'd have to be able to paint a picture of it and actually walk through it, because I think, and they do that on one of their on their YouTube page. I think they actually show you the area and show you it all. So maybe we'll have to do that.
We can do some research. But this is probably going to turn into a two-parter talking about this.
It's got to. Yeah. I mean, it's going to.
And I haven't even finished the book yet.
So what I imagine it being basically is though, like, he went off and part of the regression, and I think it's part of this regression, that he talks about, like, where is my son? Like, I got to get back to my son. And they tell him he is safe. We are watching him. And those are the eyes that Junior is seeing. And they have him frozen in place. And maybe the eyes don't realize he's having a fear, because the red eyes, remember from what they're saying, they're the children who don't know how to use their power to the fullest. Right. So they're thinking, oh, we're just watching over him and he's okay. He's laying here. He's fine. Yeah. And maybe they're communicating that to the beings that he's on this journey with now. But they don't know what their power is doing to Junior. Right. So Junior's terrified and frozen and doesn't know what to do, because these eyes are staring at him, which the eyes peering at them seems to be the catalyst of the being paralyzed. Right. So that's their power. Like the power of their stare is what's keeping him in place and keeping him safe as far as what they're thinking they're doing for him. Right. So they're like, oh, he's safe. We're watching him. He's okay.
It was just nightmare fuel for him.
Right. But while Chris is up here having this other experience completely different, like he's having this fearful experience down below.
Yeah. So
because Chris is
essentially,
up here.
And so until we further notice when we look at like the maps
where
and the
everything
diagram, it's, to me, it doesn't seem super likely that his body was laying there the whole time, but maybe that's what happened.
But remember, he was laying down. So like, imagine a person laying down, and they don't even have to necessarily in brush, because he was in these high reeds trying to hide from the craft during this time. Yeah. So during his experience, his body would have been, if his consciousness had just left and his body was there, he's laying in this tall brush trying to hide. So and this is now at nighttime. So Junior being scared, trying to like look around, he's not necessarily going to see his father in tall grass that's hiding. Right. You know.
Dude, yeah.
So it's a.
I'm totally like, it makes sense to me if it would be like an out of body experience, and that actually lines up with other experiencers.
Mm-hmm. So he could have been gone for who knows how long his actual consciousness was gone from his body, but physically his body was only laying there for 4 hours. So when he came back, only 4 hours of time had passed in where his body was.
Yeah.
Which set off the events of everybody freaking out looking for him.
All right, let's do this fourth one here.
Okay.
And Michael says, do they have a family here? Chris says, it's sad, very sad. Michael says, you're still learning now. Used the one I go home. What? I want to use. Oh. I think he must have said there, you still want to go home. It's just that weird transcription.
It's the transcription.
So you're still learning now. You still want to go home? And Chris says, I want to see my son. Michael, are they ready to let you go home? Chris, they told me whenever I want, I can always go back home. Michael, how did you get from that place back to the road? I guess that's referencing the night. I mean, yeah, this is all referencing the night, but
yeah.
Okay.
And if you watch the documentary,
it
will kind of show you where he went missing and when it took him. Because they go over that in the documentary.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. Anyway,
no, so yeah, that, and they mentioned it there, like he might have been gone for so long. They're like, you want to go back now? You're still learning, and he's like, I gotta get back to my kid. Like he's there, and I don't know how long I've been gone.
Yeah,
and this is his consciousness outside of his body, supposedly, or in my theory, right? Mm-hmm. That's like worked up because he doesn't know how long he's been gone, and that's his consciousness knows that he would never leave his son for much longer than an hour, even though it's already been 4 hours.
Right.
You know? So his consciousness is not connecting the time.
Right. Because, I mean, let's say you do get separated from your body. Who knows what your experience of time is at that point anyway.
Right. Yeah.
And that in and of itself could explain the time loss. Mm-hmm. Because think about it. So like, if there's like a separate soul from your body, right? And you can like go out and travel the universe and have experiences like as a soul, disconnected from your body.
Yeah.
Well, your body's not there with you to like take all those things that happen and write them into memory banks in your neurons.
Right.
And so when you then get back to your body and you wake up, it's like waking up for a dream where it's really fuzzy.
Yeah.
Because your brain wasn't
body wasn't there to
recording all those neural pathways of the events that happen. So it's not the same sort of accessible memory. Yep. So it may not even be that the memory is like intentionally wiped per se.
It's just your mind, your physical mind.
But this other thing I'm going to show is going to kind of contradict that. That's so interesting.
But like that makes sense of why you would forget those things.
So weird about this to me is like, so why do they have to always mess with our sense of time? Why do they have to mess with our memory of events and things?
Yeah. Are they really, or is it just our bodies and our minds trying to?
Well, because like that is pretty invasive. Like if we had technology, like if I had a technological device that just got invented and I could point it at someone and press a button and make that person lose the next 4 hours of their life,
or the past 4 hours,
or their past 4 hours of their life, like a little neuralizer from Men in Black.
Yeah. I was thinking the same thing.
That's pretty invasive. Like
absolutely, yeah.
Like,
and that could be seen as an act of aggression, you know?
Right?
Yeah.
Like, who are you to freaking come into my body, my life, and rearrange my experience of consciousness and in reality and existence? Like, that is super invasive.
Yeah, and I think
their answer could be, well, we're the ones that created you, so suck it up. Yeah,
and so the clip you're about to play is gonna basically like contradict that in a sense of like, I don't know if the clip.
Yeah, so
I don't.
I'm gonna skip forward here from what we've been talking about, okay? Because later on, this is about 4 years after the initial encounter, okay? And it was about 2 years after the initial encounter when the discovery thing happened, and then they spent another 2 years where Discovery kept playing the damn thing every 2 weeks on rerun, and everyone in their community would see it, and it just made a mockery of their lives. And so their lives went from like bad reputation to worse, because now every time the kids go to school, they're being picked on by their friends and the teachers.
Yeah, they're using the content of this documentary to mock them and stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And so like it just becomes more and more miserable for them.
Yeah.
And then even though his Crohn's is gone, he now starts having arthritis issues. He gets rheumatoid arthritis, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then it gets to a point where, and just the point of all the mockery of his family and stuff, and Chris just makes a decision. He says, I'm done. I made this decision right now that I am never going to speak of this to anyone else ever again, and our family is just going to move on.
Yep.
I don't need to convince people. We need to just stop.
Yeah, and so he went out into and what he described in the podcast at this very time that the book is going to cover. He talks about like he went out and threw his hands up and yelled to the sky, the heavens, basically, and was like, why are you doing this? Why can nobody else experience this with me? My children are now being mocked, and, I can take it, but I don't want them to have to deal with the repercussions of what's happening to me and all these things. And like, that's where
he yells up to the sky that he's done, that he's not going to participate anymore. He's not going to.
I'm done if you're not going to allow me to show people and
right.
Have
That's
them
the other thing is like
with me.
He can like almost reliably get like he has these experiences of orbs all the time, and he can have it around other people too. But anytime anyone busts out a camera, like something happens, the camera breaks or it doesn't come out, or
and
like
not only
one thing or another, like there's never any proof, and no one will ever like. No one, they're like hiding from everyone except for the Bledsoes here. And
not only that, but like people who have already made their point of view heard, like his parents that live on the land next to him, they're not allowed to see this either. So anytime they're out experiencing this thing as a family, the 6 of them, and they're out experiencing it, as soon as his parents walk out and join the rest of the family, they go away.
Right.
And as soon as they go back inside or are no longer looking, it comes back and it's right in their face again.
Right. So this very night that he decides he's done, he's had enough, he's like sleeping in his study because his arthritis is so painful that he doesn't want to wake up his wife. Yeah. And so he passes out, and he wakes up to like feeling pressure coming off of his hip, and he basically is being sucked up through the ceiling and up into a craft, and this time he's awake for it, this time he's conscious for it, this time he knows what's happening. And so he gets pulled into this craft, and it's this big dark room that's circular, and it feels familiar to him for some reason. Mm-hmm. Probably because of that, the previous regression.
Yep. Even though it was like a ball of light that he was in, it wasn't necessarily the same room. But but he described it as somewhere familiar because he's as if he's been there before. Yeah.
Right. So they fly him somewhere. He says he sees stars whizzing by the ship, which is crazy. That means he must be going crazy fast.
Yeah, we'll just describe it as a ship. We don't know if this thing is technological or if it's something ethereal. Yet.
Right. Like, I don't know.
There's no way to know.
Mean, a ship is a thing that transports entities, and that seems to be the function of this,
it's
right?
the easiest to understand.
So, yeah, whether or not it's built out of metal and stuff.
Right.
Anyway, so they arrive, and he thinks he's like, they land in this like desert wasteland with like caverns and like canyons, and he thinks he's in Utah
because that's his
reference for it. But he says the lighting is wrong, like it's either like too dark for daytime or too bright for nighttime, like it's not right.
It's kind of like a dusky time, but it doesn't make sense.
And then they bring him into this canyon, and that's basically where this portion that I'm going to play from the book picks up. And this is when he first encounters the lady and remembers it.
Okay.
Previous Easter. Their bodies glowed ivory yellow like the moon, and it occurred to me that they must wear a kind of cloak to protect my eyes from their brightness. They must have been inside the orb with me the whole time, escorting me to wherever place we were. All at once, the three of them glided past me down the canyon. Utterly bewildered, I could hardly get myself to move, but they stopped and made a motion for me to follow them. Curious and afraid to be left alone, I began to walk in their tow. Ahead of us, the canyon walls seemed to wind on and on forever. I walked behind them for a long time, what felt like the distance of a mile. As on the orb, it was totally silent in the canyon. I didn't try to speak, and don't know if I could have if I tried. I was walking behind them at a steady pace when suddenly, out of the gloomy darkness of the canyon, I saw the wall of a canyon ahead awash in brilliant light. The light came from behind a left-hand corner in the canyon's winding. Seeing the canyon wall so clearly shocked me. It looked so much like canyons on Earth. As we approached, I grew more and more impatient to discover what the light source could be in such a strange, desolate place. The beings continued ahead of me at the same patient pace. Finally, we rounded the corner. The lady was there, beaming. She was the light and the light source. The canyon gleamed around her the same color as her bluish-white aura, and her dress was such a bright white I could hardly look at it. She was seated on a massive stone-carved throne in a recess in the canyon wall. As the beings led me to her, I watched her, unmoving, powerful, unspeakably beautiful. When we approached the front of the throne, the beings gave her a slight bow and turned to walk away, leaving me alone looking up at her. She stood up from the massive throne and hovered over the carved-out floor beneath it, never touching the ground. Just 40 feet away and 20 feet above me, she spoke a parable that took a long time for me to process. When the red star of Regulus aligns, just before dawn in the gaze of the Sphinx, a new knowledge shall come into the world. I was not sure what that meant. I have come to understand that around Easter 2026, there will be the end of an old way and the beginning of a new. I felt overcome with a newfound ability to feel others' pain, as well as an impulse to help them through it. The thoughts and emotions of others seemed vitally, extraordinarily connected to me. She communicated to me that she could now trust that I was forever committed to sharing what I knew with the world, whatever the cost. She wanted the world to know and trusted me to deliver as much of this knowledge as I was meant to. They would help me in the journey and were grateful that I was with.
Cool.
So this is the lady.
And prophecies for a
changing of the age, for a new age of power in the cosmos. Mm-hmm. You know, you think of like the zodiac, right? The precession of the equinox, and like that we're in the age of Pisces now. Yeah, heading into the age of Aquarius.
Right,
and
that transition has always been like a fuzzy thing. It's not like so precise.
Right. What happens during that time? Because we've only lived in the age of Pisces in modern history, right?
Well, we've been on the dawn, like basically our whole lifetimes. But basically there's about 100 to 200 year period. Like there's a period where like you're kind of in both. You're just in transition.
Yeah.
You're not like clearly in one or the other.
So if
because it depends on where you draw the dividing lines between the constellations.
Right. So like, and whether there's some kind of gradient, right? Like whether you're still partially in this and you're just still cusping into the gradient.
Yeah.
Like,
and like, look at the way everything else in nature works. Like transitions are gradual.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of times.
So this idea of the changing of the age doesn't necessarily mean that something's immediately going to happen, right?
What did she call that star?
Regulus,
Regulus. The red star of Regulus
sets over or rises over the
Sphinx,
the body of the Sphinx.
Yeah. Then the world will change.
The new age will. Let's replay that. I want to hear that again.
Such a bright white I could hardly. She spoke a parable that took a long time for me to process. When the red star of Regulus aligns, just before dawn in the gaze of the Sphinx, a new knowledge shall come into the world.
So a new knowledge shall come into the world. It doesn't necessarily talk about the age.
Maybe that's when they've decided to like reveal themselves to us.
Right. The knowledge of the fact that these things are real comes unto man.
Regulus star?
Regulus is the brightest
Alpha, object. Also known as Alpha Leonis, is the brightest object in the constellation Leo, one of the brightest stars in the night sky. It's a quadruple star system composed of 4 stars that are organized in 2 pairs.
Consists of a blue-white main sequence star and its companion, which has not yet been directly observed, but is probably a white dwarf. The system lies approximately 79 light years from the sun. Regulus is a harbinger of spring in the northern hemisphere and is a harbinger of spring in the double says that twice.
Yeah.
The name of Regulus, derived from a Latin word for king, reflects an ancient belief in an astrological importance of the star. So there's multiple pairs, the blue light being the most prominent, but then it talks about the red star of Regulus. So that might be this hidden star that hasn't been seen yet.
Now I gotta go down a rabbit hole of Regulus mythology. Little king of the ecliptic. All right. Well, that's my homework for this week.
So later, this lady reveals herself to be Hathor,
also I did. So I skipped over that part.
Yeah.
Okay. So this was not actually the first time he met her and remembered it. This is the first time he got taken up and like abducted and remember that.
The abduction. Right.
Right. And I mixed up. This was not the night that he screamed and quit. That was actually like a couple weeks earlier when he decided he was going to quit.
That's right.
Or months earlier. He said he's quit, he's done, and then that night the lady comes to him.
In the description of what happened to him at his home, he's outside, right? And he's looking up, and I don't remember what the catalyst for him personally was. That was the night he was yelling, right?
Yeah.
And saying he was done. And all of a sudden, this wind hits him.
And this wind, it was not a windy day.
It was not a windy day, and none of the trees were affected by this wind. It hit him, and it was a powerful, mighty wind, he describes, and it knocks him like over as this bull.
He looks to see what the source of the wind is, and he sees this giant bull charging him
through what he describes as like a black hole, and that's where the wind is coming from. And as the bull comes over him, knocks him down, and when he looks up, he sees the lady.
Yep.
And he describes her just like we just heard, this beautiful white gown.
And I'm listening to this in the car, and I'm like, that's Hathor. I think I might have my Egyptian gods wrong, and that's what was going through my head. I was like, I know that there's one of the Egyptian goddesses that is associated with the bull.
Yep.
So that's exactly where my mind went. And then during one of our breaks here tonight, Drew tells me like, "Oh, did you get to the part of Hathor?" And I was like, "I thought that was just me putting it together because if he does spell it out in the book, I haven't gotten there yet."
He talks.
I just made that association. I was like,
so he talks about
woman, God. This sounds very Egyptian.
You came to it more naturally. I listened to the podcast where he describes it, and where later when he talks to these experts like Hal Pavenmeyer and later Tim Taylor, they're the ones that give him the names for these things and like help him to understand what these things mean,
because he probably hadn't studied Egyptian mythology.
Diana Pasolka is one of the people that helps him understand the imagery that he's seeing and put it to words, because him being from North Carolina and he doesn't have the words to put to these things.
Are you saying people who live in North Carolina are stupid?
No, I'm just saying that
I'm sorry to all my listeners out there. Drew thinks you're all stupid and you can't use words good.
No, I'm saying that you haven't been able to, right? So you're in a place where your religion kind of dictates what your knowledge is. Schools aren't going.
Well, that
over
goes back to our
Egyptian
consciousness
mythology
episode
there at that place.
Right,
like,
right.
It's all locked in their religious point of view.
That was our consciousness episode, right? And in the secret history, we've been talking about this.
Absolutely.
Is like it's what you know, what you believe is possible, what you think are the limits, like in a way, whichever thing you believe, in a way you're right, because you're defining your own limits of possibility of what you're willing to consciously observe.
And you're putting your own name and imagery to things that are happening, right? So like something might happen, and just like different ancient cultures, like we've talked about, have the same name or have the same stories of this fish god or coming out of the sea to restart civilization. Like they're all putting it on their own spin of mythology that they were brought up with. Yeah, they all have different ways to describe the same thing happening. It's the same idea as like he didn't know that this was Hathor.
And have I said this, or was this just during the breaks that I said this? But this all lines up with the Owaspy, which I've talked about like 5 times now.
You mentioned it, I believe, on the podcast. Yeah, in this episode. Yeah, I think you mentioned it.
I thought it was during a break, but that it essentially in Owaspy, like they have this like organization of gods who serve the creator.
Different purposes,
and they're they have
different jobs.
They have different jobs. There's like hierarchies, and like it all just sounds like Owaspy,
and it all sounds like Egyptian mythology too. Like even just in Egyptian mythology, like so.
That's like the thing about all these topics is like it's so weird, it's so strange that either like. I understand people who are just like, that's all a bunch of BS. I'm going to stick to science. You guys are just talking la. But like, if you're actually trying to like make sense of it, if you actually take some of this stuff like for like somewhat seriously, and you're trying to like piece together these puzzle pieces, like it feels like there's pieces that belong together from everyone's mythologies, from everyone's little histories, from all of these different strange experiences, from all of these paranormal phenomenon. Yeah, and they go together in ways that you probably would never be able to intuit because it's such a complicated thing.
Yeah, we're talking about something that's so macro, that's so esoteric, and the time scales on which these things are actually happening. The times in which they are manifesting on Earth are different eras, right? That have different ways of looking at the world. So if a god were to pop down into today's society, we would look at it completely different than the people of ancient Egypt would have looked at it.
We would see it as an extraterrestrial.
Exactly.
We would see it as an alien.
That's our reference point now.
Right.
So that's where this kind of like it's starting to like when you just take the pieces that the pieces from UFOs and all of the different things, sightings that have happened, and like you see how strange it is that they're popping in and out of existence, and they're like seemingly moving at
There was also another
ridiculous
really
speeds and stuff.
Pretty crazy fact about the first meeting he had with we'll call her the lady Hathor. She when she was talking to him, first she was like, you have to keep talking about this. Like, we need you to do this. This is your purpose. Like, we need someone like you to spread the word about, because there's people out there who try and like talk about all this stuff like it's dark and demonic, like this is all evil. And I still think there could be a side of it that is just maybe different.
Well, there's more than one God, right? There's more than one of these lowercase gods.
Right. And some of them could be selfish and
exactly, just like
self-centered.
Just like in the secret history, how Lucifer and Satan were separate, but they had Lucifer being the fallen angel.
Yeah,
that had different intentions and made love to woman and bore these titans, which wreaked havoc on Earth. And so, capital G God was basically like, yo, what the hell are you doing? Like, this is not your playground to just do whatever you want. Like, you're supposed to be guarding and guiding these people into the generations to come, and you've sullied yourself on with the beings. And it was likely because Lucifer specifically, and this is not to get on a whole tangent back into secret history, but Lucifer specifically was like this idea of bringing in the material world. So he had a door into the material world, being that he was kind of guiding humanity from that proto-human state into a more solid humanistic form. And all these gods have different things that they do or are supposed to do for people on Earth. So that gets me right back to they're not all this love and light and like you were saying, like they're not all good.
Think about it this way. Imagine one scientist, or even all of them together still don't understand all of biology. We still haven't put together the full complexity of all the different ways that all the different life forms just here on our planet are connected, and how if you do something to one of them, exactly how it's going to affect everything else. Right. It is such a complicated, intertangled web of connection and dependence.
Yep.
And now you have to zoom out and take the universe. Oh, no, not the universe. The multiverse. Right. Oh, maybe not even just that. Maybe it's just multiverses and dimensions, and
it just goes on forever.
Maybe all of those possibilities are all happening at the same time. Like, life is everywhere. It's gigantic. Okay. And you expect these beings who can just appear here whenever they want, come and go, and
outside of
influence the nature of our reality. You think when they show up and you call them aliens, that you can just put some sort of like intent on them. You can be like, well, they must come from blah, blah. Like, like all of this like skepticism is like, well, why would they do this? Well, why would they do that? Like, it's Neil deGrasse Tyson is like, his main argument against aliens is that why would they come here? We're boring.
Right.
Why would they come here?
Yeah.
There's so many planets and stars and galaxies, and they would come here to watch us? That seems pretty self-centered, doesn't it? I'm like, bro, what about all our biologists going all over the world? What about all our scientists like on the cutting edge of space exploration? We explore and we catalog and we document and we get involved. And then when we realize we're doing harm, we sometimes step back and let things go back to the way they're supposed to be.
That's exactly how we should look at this.
It looks like this, but like it's of course it's going to be ultra complicated. Of course it's going to be such a big story that like you can't just reduce it, Yeah.
And it goes right back to the clips we were listening to of that first regression, and how they explain like they are here to learn, and they are everywhere in the universes to learn. They're here and there and there and here, and in moment's notice, and they're watching and they're learning how the balance of life, the material balance of life is, and what it's all about. And they're doing their own form of science to figure out how the material world exists, right? Because they are in essence non-material.
They're trying to
guide us,
the guides of creation, right?
Because they don't know what it's going to create.
Understand creation in order to properly guide it, and they may be making similar mistakes to what we made.
And they are sitting there watching it all unfold. Like, yes, they can move through time, and maybe they can move into the future, but it's always unfolding. So whether they're moving 100,000 years in the future and life is still existent, they are still learning how that life balances and how that life continues, right?
I'm still skeptical on time travel, but we'll see.
I'm just saying, if you're a non-material being that can move within universes, you could probably have a handle on time.
Very possibly.
You know? So it's
depending
it's hard to poo-poo it, but it's also hard to
defined,
understand it. It's hard to make sense of it and what it might be.
I mean, it could happen. And according to relativity, it does happen if you approach the speed of light, like you're time dilating, and when you come back, it will be different time for you.
Right. So if they are traveling, right? So if they're traveling to all these different places and time dilation is happening to them, and they're leaving here at one age, and then they leave and come back, it's a totally different age now, but they can still...
Well, so theoretically, with physics, with relativity, if you travel through space, the speed of light is supposed to be the limit. But like hypothetically, if you could break that while traveling through space, because as you approach the speed of light, time slows down for you, slows down for you, slows down for you, slows down for you.
Mm-hmm. So time is
if you could crack past C, like it's theorized that if it was possible, that maybe you would be traveling backwards in time.
If you were to go faster than the speed of light.
Yeah.
Right.
Which they then say, well, yeah, but it's impossible. So,
okay.
But the question then is, like, let's say you do have a technology where you can travel many multiples the speed of light, but it's not technically through space, so you're not breaking relativity. Mm-hmm. You're traveling some sort of warp bubble or something.
Which sounds like this teardrop looking craft that they're in, like some kind of bubble that they're in that protects them, and they, Anyway, not to go on a huge tangent on time travel, but we're pretty much over our time here.
Yeah.
I wanted to end this with a little bit of history on Hathor.
Oh, cool. Do it.
Being that she is the lady. So Hathor was a major goddess in ancient Egyptian religion who played a wide variety of roles. As a sky deity, she was the mother or consort of the sky god Horus and the sun god Ra, both of whom were connected to kingship, and thus she was the symbolic mother of their earthly representatives, the pharaohs. She was one of several goddesses who acted as the eye of Ra, Ra's feminine counterpart. And in this form, she had a vengeful aspect that protected him from his enemies. Her beneficent side represented music, dance, joy, love, sexuality, maternal care. And she acted as the consort of several male deities and the mother of their sons. These two aspects of the goddess exemplified the Egyptian conception of femininity. Hathor crossed boundaries between worlds, helping deceased souls in their transition to the afterlife. Hathor was often depicted as a cow, symbolizing her maternal and celestial aspect, although her most common form was a woman wearing a headdress of cow horns and a sun disk. She could also be represented as a lioness, a cobra, or a sycamore tree. Which
I was wondering if it was going to be an owl. Oh.
Which the tree that burned in their yard was a sycamore tree.
No, wasn't.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, and the lioness, cool the star of Regulus is in the Leo.
Huh.
And they talk about her this new age of kindness and love and joy and all that is the age of femininity, which she represents. So that's just a little bit of history on her, and yeah. Well, fascinating stuff. And I know we're going to do another episode on this because we haven't even gotten through most of the story.
Right. There's so much of the story. I haven't even finished the book. Yeah. I still want to listen to some of the podcasts. So let's just call next week part 2 of this.
I'm down. Yeah. Shout out to our buddy Andrew for putting us on to this. I'm sure we would have gotten to it eventually, but you definitely pushed us.
He gave us the kick in the pants to yo, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
Like, well, now that I'm looking into it, this is a good UFO case.
Because
I still stick to my earlier statement that I don't think any one UFO case should be
the end all be all.
The end all be all.
Yeah.
But it's about the fact that there are so many of these cases and they have so many strange details in common.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have a lot of strange details in common with this too. And like the idea of these orbs, right? These orbs are becoming more a part of our, lexicon in the world nowadays, and like them being more
it's not
of
just
part
the orbs
of the
too.
UFOs.
Like when they slow down and then like the lights chill down, he describes them as tic tacs quite often too.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really does. I think the lexicon around UFOs is changing, and I think, whether this is
Jacques Vallée, Diana Pasulka, all the researchers who have been open-minded about and like hesitant to just straight up label it as aliens from another galaxy, which it very well could be. Also be aliens from another galaxy that
or
are
another universe.
With us.
Yeah.
Could also be humans who Noah's Ark into the stars,
coming back now
before the Younger Dryas coming back and still having their old technology.
Yeah, Noah's ship could have been a spaceship,
right? Well, one of them. There seems to have been many of them
around the world. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Maybe some of them hunkered down underground as their ship. Some of them had an actual literal boat. Some of them had a spaceship.
I'm just I'm having a good time now that we're like getting far enough into this podcast that like everything we're talking about, like there's so many connections and like.
And I loved, and we didn't go over it too much, but the similarities between this story and the secret history of the world, and like a lot of that, like ancient occult, like the ancient mysteries of the world and stuff. Like it's all fascinating, and if you just open your mind a bit and let yourself allow these stories to combine in your head and like think about them, and like it's fun. It's so fun, and it can be. I don't know. I don't know what I was going to say there, but it's just a fun thought exercise to allow yourself to. And now that we're doing this podcast, and now that we're this far into it, like you're saying, like it's all starting to come together, and we're going to continue, obviously. But
Lady Hathor, we're going to do our part.
Absolutely.
All right. So with that, I hope you guys all enjoyed yourselves today. We had a blast. We went over a number of times. We're not super crazy late this time. We've gone longer than this, but
the boys stayed asleep tonight, which is nice.
If you're watching on YouTube, if you can help us help our YouTube channel grow, give us a like, a comment, a subscribe, share it with your friends on Facebook.
Yeah, and even if you're just sharing it to people who have already seen it or whatever, like any interaction with us online is going to help. So dude, like you guys email us, contact us. Like if you're listening and if there's this stuff that we're talking about here, if there's any other thing that it makes you go, oh, that makes me think of this story or that book, right? Point that out to us, please. Yeah. Like send us an email. We would love to know more and more and more about the types of intricate connections that these topics have. So we're here to explore and learn ideas. Yeah, so we want to learn. You can email us at hosts@dualitycheck.net. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. Hopefully in the next week or two, I'll really actually get the Twitter and TikTok going. We're going to start putting some clips out and just short stuff to get people interested. In the meantime, if you notice something weird with the podcast, I did break the website, but the episodes are back up. I still have work to get all the descriptions and stuff back up. Dean's currently rebuilding the website, and the RSS feed is back. The audio's there. We're just working on getting all the rest of it. And the worst part is I did all this work, and I realized at the end that it was pointless, and there was one stupid checkbox that could have fixed it all. Oh, damn technology. God. Hey, we're learning this whole thing together. But hey, it gives us an opportunity to do a little bit of redesign on our website. So. Yeah, no, I think the new website looks a little bit better now. I think it's more fun. Check it out. Yeah, dualitycheck.net. See ya. Love you guys.
we got all the episodes there. You can always read them there. And also, you can always go there to get the images that we're talking about. You can always go there to get the links to everything that we're talking about. Links to books,
if you
links
want
to videos.
one place you can bookmark to reference all of our stuff, go there.
Right. Because we can't drop all the links in YouTube just yet. We're going to hopefully be there soon. But I know most of you guys are probably listening on Apple. So anyway.
All right. Peace out.
We will see you guys later.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.